housing is pitted against the need to protect our green spaces. But could all that be about to change? Because now politicians and business leaders are preparing to take on the decades-old planning system itself. And they have two targets in their sights: combating Britain's housing shortfall while giving the UK's corona-crunched economy a boost.
Most radical reforms of our planning system since the end of the Second World War.
So how would the government's new system work? Well, it all comes down to proposals for a new planning system that would divide the land into 3 zones: for protection, renewal, or growth. In protected areas, developers would still need planning permission to build, much like the current system. In renewal areas, planning applications would be streamlined. And in growth areas, there is a radical change. If the work fits within local rules, then planning permission will be granted automatically. To the victor the spoils. It's this idea of automatic planning permission that's put some on the offensive. The Campaign to Protect Rural England claims the plans would take decision-making powers away from communities and councils, handing it over to housing developers and central powers in Westminster. These new proposals haven't come into effect yet, so we don't know which areas will be designated as growth zones. But there are some parts of the country where locals say their right to protest has already been watered down, and that might give us a sense of what's round the corner. Take Garsington in Oxfordshire. It currently has 700 houses, but there are proposals to build 1,800 new houses on the edge of the village. Steve Lockie's lived around here for all his 70-odd years, and in that time he's seen the boundary of the city of Oxford creep ever closer.
You see from this angle, there's very little gap between that and the bottom end of the village.
Yeah.
I mean, it means basically we're going to become part of Oxford.
In the end, you don't want houses near you. Surely this is a little bit of not in my backyard or not in my neighbouring field.
Oh, there's always going to be a case of that, of course. It's just we have to try and get back some kind of balance. We're doing everything we can to destroy that last bit of nature left.
So Steve's not happy with the proposals, but doesn't the planning system ensure it's a local issue to be dealt with by local councils? Well, in this case, not exactly, because this development is part of a larger effort to build more than 30,000 homes in South Oxfordshire. The government has stepped in and told local authorities they must approve the plan.
We've got all our power from our environment taken away from us. No matter how much we protest and how much we vote, you know that it's going to be overturned. We feel helpless.
And campaigners fear that with automatic permission in the new proposed growth zones, local voices will be cut out of the democratic process entirely. But the government insists that community engagement, environmental protection and sustainability will be at the heart of the reforms. A spokeswoman told us that communities will be able to exert real influence over the location and design of development in their areas, but that the system does need to be simplified. So, what do businesses make of the proposals? What do you and your members think about the planning system at the moment?
It's complex, costly, obstructive, opaque.
Fenella Collins is from the Country Land and Business Association, or CLA for short. She says the complexity and costliness of the current system acts as a drag on firms.
It has a tendency to prevent them from putting planning applications forward to reinvest in their farming businesses.
When it comes to building more houses and making that easier in some places, isn't that just because many of your members want to sell off fields for fortunes?
No, I don't think so. They know and can see the need for new houses for local people to live in.
So a new system of growth areas could work for some, but the idea of protected zones? Well, Fenella fears they'll expand an area that already limits development, the Greenbelt.
Development will be restricted in the protected area zone, and I see that as regressive. I think that will be actually even worse than we have today.
Is your concern that, in effect, large parts of the countryside become like the Green Belt is already, with this massive presumption against housing and development?
Yes, I think you could end up with that. There's almost a suspicion about economic development in rural areas, and I think that we need to actually move on from that.
The government told us their proposals will not restrict appropriate development in rural areas, and they insist they want to protect the Green Belt. But is it a protection that delivers what we need it to? For some, it's the green armour shielding the countryside from the mortal threat of urban sprawl. To others, it simply stops the development of land that is of otherwise limited environmental value. But how did we end up with green belts in the first place? Well, the early years of the 20th century saw the UK's cities grow rapidly. Over the course of just 20 years, it's estimated London's built-up area doubled.
The Green Belt was the answer, a strip of land surrounding urban areas where development is tightly controlled.
And now, while a tiny 0.0004% of land in Wales is green belt, they cover 2% of Scotland and just over 12% of England. But has our idea of green belt kept up with the reality? Northern Ireland, for one, has scrapped the green belt designation entirely.
The words Green Belt might bring to mind an environmentally friendly paradise, but campaign groups like Friends of the Earth say that whilst these areas may be a no man's land for new builds, one thing they're not is particularly green.
The majority of London's green belt is used for intensive arable farming or recreation. But could the new idea of planning zones be used to create something greener?
Across the country,